Hello, I'd like to welcome everyone to the third of our Cat Chats. These are meant to be informal discussions on the media arts in general, and we've had Andrew Draws Palermo spoke about cinematography first, and then we had Will Reeves in audio engineering. And I'm pleased to introduce Jonny Pez, I'll just say animator Jonny Pez, and illustrator Ben Chlapek, just to bring it down to one word each, because they will be talking about their careers today. A couple of thanks. I'd like to thank the Missouri Arts Council for allowing this program to come about with some funding, and Stevens College for housing us here at Stevens in their studios, and the City of Columbia for supporting CAT's mission as a nonprofit community media center. We also really appreciate people in the audience coming by and taking part in this discussion. And what I'll do is turn this over to Jonny and Ben, who will, just a couple things. One, this is meant to be a discussion with the audience, so feel free to raise your hand and ask questions, comment, that type of thing. I'll have the microphone, and if you could speak into the microphone, then we'll be able to have it on the television program that results. So, and I don't have a second thing. So I will turn it over to our guests. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Great, thanks. So we thought we would start by showing some of our more recent work, and then go into how we got on this path. This is one of my more favorite things that I've done, and well, I'll just play it first. That was a commercial for True False in 2010.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
1 year, 2 years ago.
Take it away. Then.
I do illustration and graphic design, emphasis on hand-drawn stuff. I don't have any music to go with my pictures, but these are a bunch of film illustrations for, I think, the year's best documentaries, 2011. And I do lots of concert posters and just miscellaneous other artwork and drawing. So, yeah. I feel like I should have brought a song, I guess.
So maybe we'll start with you, Ben. How did you get onto this path of becoming an artist, and specifically, how did you get to just making doodles at home to wanting to become an illustrator versus all the other paths that an artist can take?
I think it started in high school when I took a graphic design class, and it was essentially the only job I could see myself doing every day that wouldn't make me want to blow my brains out. So that was a big part of what got me into it, because I didn't know what else I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So I thought maybe I could somehow cheat the system and draw pictures all day and make money for it. I picked that as my major when I came to Mizzou, and started screen printing about halfway through college. Mm-hmm. And started drawing a lot and making concert posters, and I guess that's where I'm at. That's what I've done. What about you?
Well, I wanted to go to college for filmmaking, and I was also very interested in motion graphics. I picked up this book, I remember in high school, by Chris and Trish Myers, I believe, and they showed all the ins and outs of After Effects, which was it's still today the industry standard for motion graphics, and there was something in the introduction that said that if you if you knew After Effects, you would always have a job, and that kind of stuck with me. But I came to Mizzou, I kind of wanted that big campus feel. I only visited a couple of colleges before I made my decision. I went to Savannah College of Art and Design, and they actually had a motion graphics curriculum there, and I was very interested in that. They were one of the few schools that at the time that that had a very specific curriculum for something that was pretty new. But I wasn't too confident with my portfolio yet, and almost all of my friends were going to Mizzou, coming from St. Louis, and so I saw a couple of movies that had that big campus feel, and SCAD, Savannah, it was a neat town, but it was all spread out, and it didn't have that big campus feel. So I just kind of followed the herd and came here.
Yeah.
And I ended up falling in love with the town, so I stuck around. I've been here for the last 12 years. But anyway, my early influences came from Stanley Donwood, who is most notably known for doing all the Radiohead artwork, OK Computer, the album cover there. I think all the Radiohead artwork is either Stanley Donwood or Stanley Donwood and Tom York together. And what I really liked about his work was, it was very, he was using programs like Photoshop. And Photoshop is something that I taught myself in high school. It was when it was pretty new and there weren't any classes available.
Right.
So, like most kids of the age of the internet, you kind of just teach yourself. And so, he was using Photoshop and doing these kind of digital collages and mixing in his drawings and paintings with digital imagery as well. And this movie in particular is probably the most influential piece of my career. It's a Radiohead documentary by Grant Key, Meeting People is Easy. And it got me interested in video editing, which is what I do primarily, I would say. Very, very good sound design. It was one of the first movies I saw where things were being layered, like you would layer things in Photoshop. You would see images blended on top of one another, and videos that would go forward and then in reverse really quickly. It spoke to me. It got me interested not only in the band but also in filmmaking in general. But this is some of my early pieces in college, where like Stanley Donwood, I was trying to create these like digital collages, and I would just take photographs all over the place. A lot of dumpsters, actually. A lot of like really heavy decay. I don't know why, I was really attracted to heavy decay at the time. This post-apocalyptic fetish of mine, I guess. So I just kind of kept playing around and doing these digital works. I was trying to blend painting with photos. And these are some of the things I came up with.
Now, would you say, like, the artwork for the cover of that film, did that get you into the film? Like, did you see?
Yeah.
And then the film got you into video editing?
Mm-hmm. I was actually really surprised at how much the film reminded me of the cover art, like Stanley Donwood's art, because of all that layering, too. Yeah. God, this is probably 10 plus years old. It was weird going through and finding all this old stuff. I couldn't find the actual data information. I found printed copies and just took a photo of that. So one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, I'm really interested in, is that we both do this thing where we work digitally, we work with graphics, and that's very important, but we're also still very much using analog
Right.
tools as well.
Yeah.
And here's an example where I did a digital collage on the left with a lot of photos, blending them in Photoshop. And then I decided to make a photo etching in one of the printmaking courses I was taking in college. And that's on the right. And I kind of went back and forth. This is another photo etching of a collage that I created in Photoshop. And I actually created a large painting of that too. Here, I actually did some Xerox transfers where you take, what do you call it? You take, I took these catalogs of suburban homes, these Ethan Allen environments, and I would make Xerox copies of them, and then you use lighter fluid, and you kind of soak
Light
it.
them on fire.
You soak it in lighter fluid on some kind of, thick paper, rag paper, and kind of just scratch it from behind, and all that Xerox ink kind of seeps
Soaks in,
in.
yeah.
So I would do these like actual collages on paper instead of digitally, and then I would draw and paint on top of them, and to blend them better, I would eventually turn what is kind of like this mixed media painting into a digital print, because I wanted to use Photoshop to kind of blend the colors better. I kind of worked backwards.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's pretty funny because you were flip-flopping through. I don't know. I never thought to do that. I never
It's a lot of fun.
really wanted to use Photoshop ever.
Ended up in an experimental media class creating this book, kind of like a catalog, but it was more abstract. I was very, very interested in suburban sprawl, I think, and consumer media.
Yeah, that was really cool. I still think you should do more stuff like that.
Well, okay, I'll come back to this in a minute. This is, I'll touch on it briefly. This is a show that we did at the old Ragtag. My business partner, Joshua Davis. After college, the first thing I did was I created a Flash website business with my buddy Josh, who was a graphic designer. And we had one art show at Ragtag where we took some of the illustration elements that Josh would create and randomly generate them in Flash, which is an Adobe program application, usually made for websites. But I went
Sort of
to
animation, yeah.
Right. I went to Anderson Ranch, and ironically enough, I was with a teacher also by the name of Joshua Davis, and he was teaching us how to create these programs where we could throw elements in and randomly generate a design, and you would keep pressing the space bar and get a new randomly generated design based off these elements that you were feeding it and tweaking the parameters and all that.
Yeah.
And then so we decided to do an art show about this where we're digitally creating these layers, and once we were happy with the layer, we would bring it in Illustrator and then we would go back into Flash and keep hitting the space bar with some new elements, and here you can see them a little better here.
So you did kind of similar to the Xerox transfer. You did a gesso transfer for these.
That's right. So once we were happy with the composition, maybe 5 or 6 randomly generated layers, we wanted to, we had to figure out a way to blow it up really big because we wanted to fill up all this wall space. So we created these wood boards as our canvas and just gessoed them down with the printed paper on top. Mm-hmm. Similar to the Xerox transfers, you kind of you heat it from behind as you kind of rub the back of the paper.
Yeah.
And here we would tile, I don't know, a dozen sheets of paper to cover.
Yeah, they were pretty big. They're like 6 foot by 4 foot or something. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. But that was just a little art experiment that I did with my buddy Josh while we were making websites, which is how I first started working with Ben.
Yeah.
Ben was a couple years underneath me in MU. I was a photo emphasis, and you were doing the graphic design program. I remember we hired you to do some. What did we hire you to do?
Basically grunt work, I think.
Yeah.
Like I was like cutting people out of photos, like so you could move them around or something. It was like zoom in real close on these people in these photos, and I'd have to just trace around every single like piece of their hair, and then zoom out, and it would just like.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, it paid my bills at the time. So yeah, I guess at the time I was doing. I got into hand-drawn typography and illustration maybe like halfway through college, and it was essentially out of frustration of like be working on a project for either a poster or any number of an identity or something, and you couldn't find a typeface that would fit, and there was they had like 100 typefaces, and you're like, well, this kind of sucks.
After a while, everyone is very familiar with all
there's
of them.
100 of them. There's like 4 that are acceptable to use,
Right.
and like so I kind of did it as a way to make my stuff look a little different, and just because I was bored with it, and so I started getting into this hand-drawn typography, and I think this was the first thing that I did. It was supposed to be, it's pretty bad. It's supposed to be a cover for a summer theater brochure for Mizzou. And I was really into found objects and stuff at the time, and like kind of distress, like 90s grunge sort of inspired stuff. So that's why the masking tape is on there.
The sign of the times.
Yeah. But at the time you couldn't, with the Adobe Illustrator software, you couldn't just like trace something and have it in vector. So you had to go through and trace everything. You had to either like mess with it in Photoshop, or you had to trace it with the pen tool. So like that's what that guy is, like the weird waiter, and you just had to like go through and trace it with a pen.
Yeah.
And not always look the same, and it was just kind of like weird.
It was a pain.
Looked like it was made out of a coat hanger or something, It's like really kind of lame style of illustration. But I got into like hand-drawn type, and this was the first, I learned screen printing because the grad student at the time, Bob Hartzell, came and was screen printing basically in a closet in the printmaking room, kind of like secretively.
Oh, I remember that closet.
So we like peeked back there and we're like, oh, we want to do this. And then he got to teach a class on it. And so this was a concert poster I did for Mojo's, and it was kind of the first time I had really drawn anything since, I don't know, it felt like since I was a little kid. So that's kind of why it looks like that. But I was really drawn to it, I guess, for lack of a better word, and wanted to do it, just get better at drawing, because I don't know, when you're taking those kind of beginning art classes, you pretty much want to do anything but what they're teaching you to do.
Yeah.
Remember the first painting class, you have to paint this stool for like 3 months. And it's like, paint the stool again. Oh, you finished it. Now add another color. And it was just like, I don't want to do fine art ever. So I was really bad at drawing. This was a book cover I did, kind of along the same time as this. As you can tell, it's like this. It's got this kind of weird pencil quality to it. And I spelled McSweeney's wrong. But that's okay. It wasn't for a real person. But there was a story about this like elephant who like came through town and like destroyed half the town because it was scared or something. And so this was like the front cover would have been like just the town normal, and then the back cover would have been it all destroyed. But you can't really tell. It's just not very good. But I started using hand-drawn type in all sorts of projects. This was a logo for like a fictitious vineyard called Catnap Vineyards, and it was a packaging project, so like we had to do this, like actually make the bottles, and I wrapped yarn around the top. That was like kind of gimmicky, but so I really and I don't think anyone was doing hand-drawn type in my class at the time either, so it was really weird. Because they're like, oh, there's that guy who does that He draws everything for some reason, even though we have these perfectly good computers. So like, do that. I don't know.
No,
But
it always looked good. It stood out.
Then I started getting into weird, like, I don't know.
Was this an actual?
This is the second poster I ever did, and I really like the idea of like something, you know, since my style that I accidentally developed was sort of naive and childlike. Just these like unfortunate situations and terrible tragedies and stuff.
Is this still college for you? Was this?
Yeah, I was doing freelance poster work.
Oh, you were.
And graphic design while I was still in school. So I had done like, by the time I graduated, I had done like 10 or 15 concert posters. And
How did you get those gigs?
Bob Hartzell was working for the Blue Note, and he was
Okay.
It was a part of the class where we could do like 3 posters as like our project. I think we had to do 4 pieces total, and 3 of them could be concert posters, and 1 had to be something else for the whole semester. And I ended up having 12 that semester.
Nice.
Yeah, I was in there like all night, just screen printing and cursing at myself. So that was, yeah, I don't know, that's my early stuff, I guess. Another logo. I actually used a typeface, but I drew the coffee cups.
Hot cup, cold spoon. Nice.
And then I drew this one too, which is like towards the end of college, but I was starting to, the eye is, you know, chopsticks and a sushi roll.
So Ben, tell me a little bit about your process. How does it go from analog or traditional media to digital and graphics, since we are talking about graphics?
Right.
You know, and then back to the final product.
I'll show one example. Essentially, everything I do is drawn by hand, and it just starts in my sketchbook. So I'll start with something like that, just a drawing of, this is for a Mountain Goats poster, and all the pieces were, I didn't know how I really wanted it to look, but all the pieces were drawn separate so I could manipulate it in the computer. This is one where I did, you know, more computer work, I guess. A lot of times I'll have the drawing done all the way before I even scan it in. But I'll draw something like this, scan it in, and take it into Adobe Illustrator, and then you can just move the pieces around and change the colors and separate the layers for screen printing. So it's very minimal. I like to do very minimal computer work if I can, because I hate being tied to the computer all day. And I like the quality. I mean, you can't really fake, you know, like a hand-drawn line on the computer. They're like Photoshop brushes and stuff that kind of, but it always looks a little bit like not as good. So I just like using a pen and blowing it up, and you can really see like the rough edges. And
do you use a flatbed scanner to bring everything in?
Yeah, and that's essentially it. Just scan it in, and so like that would be, you know, the initial pieces, and then you can see this is how it looked finished. But I essentially would assemble like the black layer, like the actual image, and then figure out the fill, and then draw that in. So that would be, when I screen printed, it would be the green layer first, and then I'd add the orange for the fire, and then the black on top. So it looked like that.
Cool. How many colors do you have to limit yourself to? Just as many?
You can do as many as you want, but you know, each time you have to burn a screen, you have to, you know, put ink on it, you have to do it all over again. So it's like if I printed 100, 3 colors would be 300 pulls, but if I added another color, it would be another 100.
Oh, wow.
So it just kind of like stacks your work on, which is why I like screen printing, because it really limits your color palette, and I think it's an easy way to keep things not very busy and not to get overexcited about using color.
When you have a hand-drawn line, for example, and you bring in Illustrator, since Illustrator only works with vector images, what's the process of converting that line into a vector line without losing that hand-drawn quality of it?
There's a feature called Live Trace where it'll essentially turn any image into a vector, and you can tweak that a little bit. and it works really easy with line drawings. So if you have, for example, like this actual piece, that's just a sheet of paper, like 8.5 by 11. And then you scan it in, you vectorize it, and you can just blow it up to however big you want with very little distortion. Whereas if you tried to do that with a photograph, you would have it all pixelated and kind of nasty looking.
It's cool to know. I always work in Photoshop, and I hardly ever touch Illustrator.
Another way around.
Yeah. Question.
Yes, my question is for Ben, the illustrator. Describing the process of screen printing, it sounds rather tedious, and it sounds like it's very space consuming to do that many prints. I'm curious if there's a studio you work out of, or perhaps not. Where do you put all these things?
That's a great question. I screen print out of my house, and it is very space consuming. You have to wash out the screens with a power washer, which I have hooked up to my shower, which is weird when someone comes over to use the restroom. And they're like, it's kind of, what are you doing in here? I didn't bring pictures of that. No.
It looks
like
a
if
little
you've
bit
seen
like
the
a
movie
meth lab.
Saw, that first scene. It's like that's what my bathroom kind of looks like. But no, I actually use house paint a lot of times instead of screen printing ink, because you can buy the messed up gallons at the hardware store for like $3 or $5. Oops paint, exactly. Whereas screen printing ink costs $60 a gallon.
Oh wow.
So that's a pretty obvious choice to me. And then you have a bunch of cool colors like off-white and gray that you can do all kinds of things with. Not at all. There's really terrible colors.
How long do they take to dry?
Well, that's with the house paint. They dry very quickly. So I can lay 10 out on my, my floor. Screen print. I'll have 10 posters laid out, and then by the time I print the 11th, the first one's dry. Whereas screen printing ink, you kind of need a drying rack, and I'm just not going to build one of those. My resources are somewhat limited.
Any other questions?
Do you want to show more of your...
You want to show, okay, so when we hired Ben to do...
Right, I kind of got sidetracked, I guess.
Well, no, you had to go through college first.
I had to go
After
through
college, we kind of had to figure out a way to pay the rent. It was a scramble. I guess there's this myth that everyone, I think, believes a little bit in the back of their head that as soon as you're handed your diploma, you'll have everything figured out and you'll know what to do.
That totally happened to me.
And
Look at
I
me.
think
What are you saying? Look at me now.
I think after graduation, immediately after graduation, I went to the Macaroni Grill with my parents, and my dad took a crayon and just kind of wrote out all my expenses for the year, how much it costs to live, basically.
Sure.
And I was like, oh wow, I'm gonna have to figure something out.
Right.
So and I knew I still wanted to live in Columbia. I really like the town here. I wasn't ready to go off and get the job in the big city. So I thought I could make it work, and my buddy Josh thought that we could make this work together, and so we made these Flash websites for about 2.5 years, maybe 3. And halfway through, when Ben graduated college, he joined us.
No, I wasn't even graduated yet.
Oh, really?
I was still in school.
Okay.
I was working at the design center on campus, and I thought my boss was crazy at the time, so I quit. Well, I was gonna quit, so I went to Josh, and he said, "Yeah, you can do funny stuff for us, and we'll pay you money."
Yeah. And this was one of those funny things.
Yeah.
That's me. That's me on the far right,
Yeah.
and Josh next to me, and then
So
we have
Garrett,
Garrett and
our
Ben.
friend Garrett, yeah. And so one of the things was,
Here's another example of digital
what
and
can we
analog,
give this
right?
kid to do? Yeah. He thought it'd be funny to have cutouts of us at different places so we'd look miniature.
This was
And
for
then
our
it would
website.
be, it was gonna be something. I don't know if it was gonna be
Yeah.
a photo of us or if we were gonna animate it somehow. Or
I think it was just the About Us page.
Okay. So I went around and took pictures of everybody one day, and then I cut them up in Photoshop, and then printed them out and mounted them to paper, and cut them out and attach sticks to us so I could put us different places.
I think the inspiration behind this was Rat-a-tat. Do you
I
remember
have, no, I mean, I remember the band, but I have no idea what the inspiration was.
that?
I just thought it was like, "I'll keep this guy busy today. Let's make him cut out pictures of us. Put us around town." This was the alley on Walnut, like kind of between 9th and 10th. Those cool houses.
And then here's some more work you did for us.
Yeah,
I've
I did some really bad, like.
I've completely forgotten about this. This was a
Was this
website.
Was it a video company or something?
It's a video company in LA.
It was kind of a cool idea, maybe. I'd never been to LA, so I just kind of guessed what it was like. I imagine there were palm trees and Ferris wheels, and Sunset. I mean, their name was Sunset. Come on, I mean, I didn't have to do something that. Anyway, so the idea was like you would like scroll over these blue bars, and they would like move around, and each
That's
one would be a
right.
section, and like it would like open up a menu. It was kind of.
I'm sorry, I
Cool
apologize.
idea.
I don't have any of the old websites to show you.
Yeah, I mean, this was like.
A century ago in internet years,
Yes.
and none of them exist anymore. And
This was before the internet was only cat pictures.
yeah,
You can
and now no
remember
one
back
uses
that far.
Flash, really. Or it's
Right.
because everyone's got these tablets now that are not very Flash friendly. It's kind of one of those things that has gone to the wayside.
Yeah.
And as a Flash programmer for several years, I would say that I don't miss it in the least. It
It was
was
really terrible. We had to learn it in school.
a lot of fun at first. It was fun to experiment. I enjoyed it. I had a bit of a programming history in high school, but after a couple of years and hitting these hurdles, these problems where you don't have anyone around you to ask
Yeah, right.
questions to. The only thing that you had was this online community, and it could be a guy in India or a guy from France, and they're trying to understand what you're asking, but not really getting it. It became very frustrating, and
Yeah.
I became. It really removed me away from creating art, which is what I went to school for and what I really loved.
Well, I remember that time too, because it was like, I mean, you and Josh, were the partners or whatever. I was doing the stuff, and it would like, Josh would, do most of the design stuff and kind of like create the pages, and I would cut out people from pictures. But we'd be like working in a coffee shop, and he'd be like, "You have to give this to Johnny," and you'd just be up all night doing like code and like all kinds of. And I just imagine like that's got to be the worst.
Speaking of being up all
yeah.
night, that's one of the. We were kind of freelancers back then.
Right.
We had a company, but we lived like freelancers and set our own hours. And I don't know, maybe it was just because we were in our early 20s, but my day-to-day life was wake up at noon and go to the coffee shop, work there, and stay up, maybe until 3 in the morning or later, depending on if I had a pressing deadline.
Right.
How about you?
Yeah.
Yeah?
More like wake up at 9,
Yeah.
stay up till 5.
5 in the morning?
Yeah. And just slowly your body just degrades.
I have a question.
I think we have a quick question.
For animator Johnny, how did you put together the True False promo?
Oh yeah, I was going to get to that. In fact, this might be a good time to show the other video that I did for True False. This one's a little longer, but it's my favorite. It's the extended version of
Extended
what we call
remix.
Miniature City. We actually got an award for Miniature City, the commercial that you saw. Best in television locally for the year, and this piece we actually put together in 48 hours as True False was going on in 2010. We had Boxcar Films is my company I work with, and a whole bunch of freelancers. We worked together, and we had several cameras out throughout the weekend capturing footage, and then I would be in the editing room, and they would race the footage back to me. I would quickly transcode it into a new video format that I could edit with, and quickly go through as much footage as I could, pull out all the fun bits, and put this together in time for the closing night film. Because we were told that if we get this done in time, we could show this just before the closing night film in the Missouri Theater. And to me, that was like the most exciting thing ever. So, but the first part of this will be more of that tilt shift effect. And that's something that I saw randomly one day while going through some websites. Usually inspiration comes from just watching other videos and other people's work, and I'll just, surf the internet. I got a couple of go-to sites that I'll start with, and usually it'll lead me down a path to some artist's homepage. And I saw this new thing. It was a tutorial on the tilt shift effect, where you can kind of make things look miniaturized. And the trick is you have to start with a very wide image. So to get a lot of the images, I think 2 or 3 of the shots came from standing on top of the Tiger Hotel, and we would get the widest shots we could with the widest lens we could get our hands on, and then it's not that difficult. In After Effects, you would just kind of posterize the time. It's an effect called posterized time, where it looks a little more like stop motion animation. You're only seeing 3 frames a second. It's not super smooth. And then you enhance the colors a little bit so they're more saturated, and they kind of have that model paint look.
Yeah, it kind of looks like like a model train.
Exactly.
Setup kind of thing.
And then you just adjust the blur so that it looks like a very wide aperture, very shallow depth of field camera lens, as if you were dealing with miniatures, and you had the aperture opened up all the way. It just kind of makes things look smaller. And let's take a look at this.
I remember when you were doing that too, because it was, you had to do it overnight. Like, they got you the footage of the day and you had to have it for the next day.
Yeah.
So it was just like,
Yeah,
was there a party too at your office that night? Were you like locked in the room working while there was a party going on?
Maybe. I had a fever.
Yeah, you had a fever and you were like surrounded by like empty coffee cups and Red Bull cans, and you were just like,
I had a fever. I think I made myself sick with stress.
I think you definitely did.
But
yeah.
it was, still one of the biggest highlights of my life. Just, I couldn't speak at all either. I remember that, and we just barely got it done in time, and we were literally running with the DVD in hand to get it to the Missouri Theater, and we had to be there an hour before so that the projectionist, James Bond was his name.
Yeah.
He doesn't like the jokes, and we played it, and we were trying to figure out a way to play it in the highest quality as we could. We didn't think a DVD would look that great, blown up really big, but he said, no, we have the hot rod of DVD players here, and it's like, yeah, right. So he popped it in, and I went out to the edge of the balcony. I was the only one in there. Everyone was kind of held back at the door, and the lights went off, and we watched it, and I got chills, goosebumps. It was cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah. So True False, I think my favorite pieces have always been for True False, because instead of working for a client where you're told what to do, or you have to work on a subject that you may or may not care about, True False is a subject that we always care about as artists and as people who love this town, and we usually have a lot of creative freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. What else? So after Simple Seed, which was my web company, after that, I started retouching photos, which was very natural to me, very easy, a lot different than programming. And here's some examples of that. Senior portraits, actually. I found, or this photographer in town was asking around for a guy who was pretty good in Photoshop, and my name kept coming up. So he finally said, I got to meet this guy. And when he found me, we got along really well, and he kind of showed me his techniques for retouching photos, and I thought it was something really easy to do. I just kind of went to this zen-like mode where I could stay up all night and remove blemishes off of teenagers, and I get paid. Gosh, I don't know why I got paid, but I got paid per photo, and once you got the hang of it, once you could do it really fast, then
Probably pretty profitable.
yeah, you could churn them out pretty quickly. Here's a before and after. I don't know if you could see it too well on the screen, but it's multi-layered technique where you're enhancing the image, adding a little more contrast,
Make the head bigger, stuff like that.
darkening the edges.
My head's a little too small for my body. If you could just blow it out.
There's a lot of things that I wanted to do to make these kids look more model-like, but of course, this was going to end up on their mantle, and they had to somewhat resemble what they looked like. But you know what? This brings up a great point. I think I will show this. I prepped a YouTube video here. This is a Dove infomercial,
that's
and it's trying to show how, first of all, it shows how powerful retouching can be, and it's showing how the image of beauty that we have in our mind is most likely false, and we shouldn't trust it. But to me, I would keep watching this video over and over again because I wanted to be the master at how to manipulate someone's
You wanted to be
face.
like the bad guy from the video, kind of.
Let's watch this.
Her hair is hollow gold, her lips sweet surprise. Her hands are never cold. She's got Betty Davis eyes. She'll turn music on you. You won't have to think twice. She's pure as New York snow. She got Betty Davis eyes. She'll tease you, she'll unease you, all the better just to please you. She's precocious, and she knows just what it takes to make a problem. She got Greta Garbo, stand outside. She's got Betty Davis eyes.
I love that video.
For the wrong reasons.
For the wrong reasons. Yeah, I know. It's horrible.
I want to be that good.
Really, yeah.
Just completely, yeah.
But it does show how powerful retouching can be. And Photoshop was definitely my first love in terms of computer graphics. I remember way before Photoshop getting a paint application from Babbage's computer software store at the mall.
Wow.
And it was in the $10 bin, and I thought, oh wow, I can. You know, I was looking at the back of the box. I could create these sceneries, and of course, it would look good on the back of that box at the time, like an MS-DOS game or something. But using it at home, you know, it's just such a pain. And when you try to fill an area, it would be a progressive scan from top to bottom. You know, if you try to fill a circle blue, it would start at the top and gradually work its way down. It would be so slow. So Photoshop was really kind of when that came out, that changed everything. That changed the game.
Yeah.
And you know, eventually led to motion graphics, and now I started to include it in video with Miniature City. Yeah, so I did photo retouching for a couple years, maybe 2.5 years as well, and then I took. Did I take a break? No, I don't think I took a break. It kind of overlapped when I first met Brock Williams, and he had started up this video production company in town, Boxcar Films, and I went to the screening of Box Elder, and that's when I first met these guys. I was like, wow, you know, these guys are creating movies here in Columbia, and that was kind of what I wanted to go to school for in the first place. So I kind of came full circle, and I just asked him one day out of the blue, you know, do you have anything I could work on? And he's like, sure, come to the office and I'll get you started editing, which is something I was really interested in, and I don't think anyone else really wanted that particular job. A lot of people would do it, but no one really wanted it. I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to get back into editing. You know, I love post-production. So I've been doing that for the last 3 years, I think. And let's see. Oh, the great. Here's my segue. Are you ready for this?
Ready.
So going from photo retouching, one of the things that I love doing with Boxcar Films is color grading, where you take video and you're adjusting the image just like you would in Photoshop, but this time with video. And because you're dealing with either 30 or 24 frames a second, the rules and the tools change a little bit. But here's an example. We did this commercial for Skeet Reese, who's a fisher, like a high-profile fisherman, fly fisher. Fly.
Sure.
This was several years
Sounds
ago.
like a thing.
And this, so here's a still I took before and after, where you take would otherwise be a pretty dull image, and you kind of enhance it with saturation, and you can focus. You can draw the viewer's attention to certain parts by colorizing certain parts. And here, let me. I'm going to show you the commercial as well. There we go.
Hi, Steve Reese here. I just helped design this cutting-edge new series of rods with Right in the Gill, using their patented S-curve technology, making them super lightweight, super sensitive, and every bit as strong as heavier rods out there. Believe me, these rods are money. There's a rod designed for you to catch a winner here, or here, 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 or here, here, here.
Oh God. I think it's funnier to me than it should be.
That was a lot of fun to work on, actually. Yeah, I did the titles too, and I edited the piece. Yeah, Skeet Reese, good guy.
I don't know if you can really patent S-curve technology.
No,
that's been around
Johnny.
for-
Oh, yeah. Did we get poles? They sent us the entire line of fishing poles because we had to take some close-ups of it for. In addition to this 30-second commercial,
right.
we did a lot of 5-minute kind of instructional videos for all the different types of fishing techniques. And it's kind of like golf clubs. I know nothing about fishing, but after that I learned that there's kind of there's a specific rod for every scenario. If you got a fish in a small pond, and you're on a
Like a
boat or
fish in a
something, and the
barrel.
wind's blowing from the northwest, down to the south, and you gotta use the
S-curve
old
technology,
S-curve
right.
technology to really whip it from the side. It was kind of cool.
Johnny,
But we had to return the poles. Yeah,
poles.
fishing poles.
Did you say that was something you had to edit every frame of the video to color correct, or were you?
No, that one I didn't. But this next one that I'll show you, I did. And here's an image of the program that I use. This is a program called Color. And yeah, straight to the point. It's part of the Final Cut suite, or at least it was in the last version of Final Cut. We won't go into that, but
Sore subject.
the sore subject for a lot of people. But this is a program called Color, and I can use my new point feature here. Yeah, there we go. So here's this is a scene that I got to work on. I'm very happy about. It was one of the more fun jobs I had for A Horrible Way to Die, that Simon Barrett and Kim Sherman and Adam Wingard created together several years ago. But here is a shot of Amy. I forgot her character name here, but it's a horror film, and she's being hung upside down, and she's got these blood stains kind of dripping from her face. And so they asked me if I could make the blood darker. And I was like, sure, I would love to do that. And it turned out to be almost a frame-by-frame job, because usually you can, and I can show you here, usually you can single out the portion of video that you want to manipulate using one of these three properties up here. Let's see here. This is the hue bar, and then you have your saturation bar and your luminosity. So by dragging the flags here on each of these bars, you can really get specific as to what kind of pixels you want to select. And the problem with this particular shot, there's the shot, is that she is in a red room, and I'm trying to target the red blood. So I can't just go after the hue. I can't just say, all right, I want to select all the red pixels here, because she's lit red completely. And I can't just select luminosity, because she's also, in a frenzy, very frantic. She's shaking her head from side to side, and because of that, the lighting's changing constantly. And then I can't just select the saturation for the same reasons. It was very chaotic. So that almost became a frame job. And let's see, I've got a little bit of that video here just so you get an idea of what I was working with. Oh, there was a couple other clips. I put one of them in here. It was just a poster, and that was another frame for frame thing, because it was very shaky cam, and they just wanted to make the poster on the door a little brighter. And it's really tedious work, but honestly, it's the kind of work that I enjoy for some reason. Horrific.
Do you want to show that thing we worked on together?
Which one's that?
Cherry. You want to show the cherry video?
Oh, yeah. Cherry.
So occasionally Johnny and I get tricked into collaborating by someone else and have to work together.
Like right now?
Oh, God, it happened again. I never saw it coming. Oh, well. So this is a good example of how you take my simple drawings and then
Yeah, I think this is the
Make
first
them-
time I've actually tried to work with your drawings, maybe.
yeah, probably.
And it was a real quick job. They kind of wanted it overnight, so it's a little rough. But we were just like, let's do this idea. This was in promotion for a film called Cherry, about a boy who loses his virginity in college, I think, or something like that, coming of
some
age
sort of-
story.
Right.
And so they went around and got all these little testimonial stories at bars. The filmmakers did beforehand to promote the film, and they took the best ones and asked if we could animate them. So yeah, this was our first kind of animation collaboration.
I met a young lady on a Thursday. We got to know each other, and then I met another young lady on Saturday evening, and we got to know one another. Thursday left for the weekend, and Saturday wasn't in town on Thursday. The next week, Mrs. Thursday and Mrs. Saturday came in to the bar, and it was a little awkward for me, but I figured, it's cool. They don't know each other or anything. One of them grabbed my hand, and the other one turned to her and said, "Well, how do you know him?" It turned out they were roommates.
Yay!
Yeah. So. Yeah, I guess that's how our stuff can blend together, and it doesn't happen very often, where we like.
No, but I like to do it more.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
After,
do these.
yeah.
You do these great. What do you call those little magazines?
Zines.
The zines are
Yeah.
like 2 by 3 inches, and they might have a dozen illustrations in them, but they're just kind of funny things, and you do it for fun, right? You're
Well,
not-
yeah. I mean, I sell them,
Oh.
but I mean,
I got mine for free.
fun.
And I think that they would look really good animated. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just a potpourri of bin animations.
We'll do that next time we have a whole bunch of free time.
I got one more color grading example. This is another problem-solving thing that, a lot of what I do is problem-solving. And here's a commercial where it had 2 cameras, and one of them, we could not figure out how to white balance. It was a weird bug we had that day. So here's the before, and you'll hopefully notice the difference.
Oh, hey, Doug. Hey, Doug. 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 Doug! Doug, this printer's broken again! It's not even plugged in! Power, is this thing a battery? This thing might be battery powered. I think a hamster might have crawled into it, I think, is my theory.
How was it before?
That was the before. So,
yeah.
camera B looked very, very blue compared to camera A. And here's the final. Has a couple more sound effects too.
Oh, hey, Doug. Hey, Doug. 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 Doug! Doug, this printer's broken again! It's not even plugged in! Power, is this thing a battery? This thing might be battery powered.
I also did the graphics at the end, real fast.
Are those some of the guys from Box Elder?
Are those some of the guys from Box Elder? Yeah.
All the guys from
In fact, it was kind of like the old gang back in town. Although I never worked on Box Elder, so it was like watching the old gang come back in town that you never knew.
So I've got kind of a vague question for both you guys, just as far as like finding work. It seems like you guys kind of both stumble into jobs a lot of the time. I wonder if there's more of a streamlined way of you finding work, and also it seems like, especially Jonny, it's like I really enjoy doing this kind of work. Like I love this project. I want to hear about a project that you did not love to work on, and like how the process of getting through that, like anything that comes to mind in particular, but for both of you, actually.
Ben, you want to take this one? You want to start?
Finding work.
Finding
Start with
work,
there.
yeah.
What I like to do to find work is draw things that I think are funny. Like, nope, I don't know how to work this thing. Let's see if I can find an example. Like this, I did this Ghostbusters print, which was up there earlier. And then I put it on the internet, and I hope that people buy it. So that's one way that I make a living.
Do you do anything
And
specific to get the website name out there, or your name out there?
I don't.
Marketing?
Sometimes you can send it to places that write about such things, blogs and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And just hope that people kind of spread the word. But there's a lot of things now that people can just share images, like Pinterest and Tumblr and stuff like that, where you can just like share images like wildfire. And so, eventually you can like trace it back to the owner, hopefully.
Uh-huh.
And then, so it all just sort of spreads that way, and people contact me from all over the place to like have me do their wedding invitations or their kids' CD cover they made. No, I don't know. I get to do a lot of cool stuff. I don't know how. I guess I went to a poster festival in Seattle, and I guess someone at an ad agency saw my stuff there, and they hired me to do a poster for Hewlett-Packard, but it's kind of a weird thing, and it's this one. It was to promote like this application they had, like this I think Palm device, some sort of mobile device with all these applications. So each illustrator got assigned a certain application, and mine was the New York Times.
Nice.
And then you had to do an illustration to showcase the app for the phone. It was very twisted. But so it was kind of a weird example of like analog versus digital again, I guess, because it's, everything is to promote this little square on your phone that like you can't even touch, or I don't know. It's just like this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But like they wanted to have all these illustrators make these posters for it, and then they got them screen printed, and they used it to promote it at some like trade show. So it was kind of a weird. That was just an example of someone like randomly finding my stuff, and yeah.
See, I've had difficult projects to work on. One that comes to mind was a video with a factory, and we had to make this factory. I won't go into names. We had to make this factory look like a happy place to work. And I was one of the filmers for this place, so I was there. Sometimes I don't even go on set. Sometimes I'm just editing, but this time I was filming, and I would have to set up some time-lapse videos in front of these workers that were working very long shifts, very repetitive factory work. I mean, you can imagine it's just like you would see all those videos that we kind of grew up with. This factory kind of Well, the problem was that we had to find these clips where people are happy,
Smiling and
smiling.
inspired.
We had to find these
In a
smiling,
factory.
happy workers, and they're just cutting, rubber or whatever, and they've been there for 12 hours, and
Yeah.
it was not a pretty environment, really, and
And to Photoshop out the blemishes. Make it look real happy.
so the difficult task there was that we just had to take a lot of footage, and maybe 10% of it was usable. And as an editor, the more footage you have, it just exponentially increases the amount of time that you need to spend on it to make it a complete video in the end. Yeah.
My question is for both of you. You guys are discussing your work right now. I was wondering if you have any ideas of, well, for you, Jonny, you seem to have gotten your start actually doing artwork, and I'm not sure if you do any of that today. Do you choose to not do that because of time, or do you not enjoy it anymore, or do you long to be able to do that? And
That's a great question. Yeah, I want to get back to it. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I miss it. I miss it. I love fine art, and I want to get back to fine art. And not to say that, I still feel like I'm working under the same umbrella of digital art, which is kind of what I've always been attracted to. But yeah, I've done a ton of promotional videos, commercials, corporate videos, and only a handful, I think, of really creative pieces that I really feel like I had significant input on, and the trade-off there is money, I think.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
you do both.
I'm sort of the other.
Yeah, for you, Ben, I'm curious if you've ever thought about doing, creating fonts. You seem to do all these hand illustrations, and you create them into vector images, and there are careers out there where someone just creates type.
Right.
And I wonder if that's ever crossed your mind. Or any of your art into clip art.
I saw a guy speak at a conference once he's kind of known for creating all these typefaces and of various degrees of success or whatever. But he said he didn't create fonts out of his handwriting because it was a little bit like selling your DNA. He felt like, and I kind of agree to that. Like, I don't know. I think that's one thing that makes my work maybe a little different is my typography, and if I somehow manage to sell that, then people who can draw better than me can just put my type on there, and then maybe I won't have a job again. But also the guy was saying he sold some guy bought the font, from his website for like $30, and then used it on like it was like on Taco Bell's like whole ad campaign or whatever for like several years. And so it was like that designer, probably got paid like a ton of money to do all this stuff. And then the main part of it was this like unique typeface. And then the type designer got, $30 that he made through his website. So I don't know if I don't think stock imagery or typefaces like that would be a good idea for me specifically.
I have another question. When you say you put your work online, has anyone ever stolen your image and used it for their own devices or their own money-making?
Yes, they have. One time I had an image used as some guy just photoshopped out the band that I'd put on there and used it for another concert. And the guy was paid by a music festival to make posters for the festival. So I ran across that, and I was like, this is interesting. And I contacted all the bands, and they were like, yeah, we don't know the guy who made it. And I contacted the festival, and the guy who was in charge of it was pretty mad because he had paid that guy, I guess.
Oh, wow.
And another time, I had an image stolen and put on a wallet by some sort of Chinese company. They stole all these poster artists' work and used it as wallets and made these designer wallets out of all these people's concert posters. And
Did you order one? Do you have one?
No, I didn't order one because I couldn't understand the website. But there were it was like 500 images that they had just stolen and blatantly and it just said like artist wallet, $6 or something. And you couldn't contact them because it was all it was just, if it's in China, you're just whatever. It's pretty much gone. But they did say that they limited it to 20,000 pieces, so that's at least there's not too many of them out there. So it'll probably run out pretty soon. It was one of my worst selling posters though, so I feel like the joke's kind of on them.
How did you learn of this test?
It was on one of the, I think, just internet forums. There's a site called gigposters.com, and it's all the concert poster artists. And so it was on the forum, and someone had posted a link to it. Somehow they ran across it, and it was just
Someone referred you to it.
It was no one even told me. I just stumbled across this link in the forum, and I was like, I wonder if one of mine's on here, because it was kind of like, it's always one of those things where it sucks, but it's also sort of like an honor to be like, someone ripped me off. They must think this is cool. But it was, there were like 500 of them. So it's like, all right, well, yeah.
Well,
what else?
I got a few more animation pieces here. Something's staticky. Let's just play one.
Just go ahead and play it.
All right. Here's something that I did for a gluten-free bread machine. And sometimes you work with clients that are very distant. They let you kind of do everything in your own time, and you kind of just come up with stuff. This is an example where I had Dory Colbert was the creative director that I was working with, who is awesome, by the way. But she wants to be there with you while you're creating it, and work with you, and have a brainstorming session with you, and it doesn't happen all that often.
Enjoy fresh, moist.
Start from the beginning.
Bready. Enjoy fresh, moist, tasty, gluten-free. Breads, cakes, and doughs, burger buns, even pizza. All your favorites, all possible with a new contamination-free, scientifically advanced baking system. Bready, the bread that loves you back.
The bread's actually really, really good.
What animation did you use software did you use to animate?
The software that we used for this piece was all After Effects. The video, or I'm sorry, the elements, like the floral things that are flying around and all of the images, that was prepped beforehand in either Photoshop or Illustrator. And she actually had all of those for me, and she had a storyboard with a loose version of the narration, kind of plotted out with time code, and said, okay, at this mark, when she says pizza dough or something, we'll have the pizza lady come in, and my portion of the creativity there was kind of like how things would fly in. A lot of times people don't know exactly what's possible, so I'll be able to quickly mock up some examples of we can make them kind of a flat 2D plane, but we can also rotate it a little bit, because we have this in After Effects you have this 2.5 dimension space where you can have all these like paper stills, kind of like South Park, and layers and depth, and you can tilt things, and it's not a true 3D program, but because if you turned an image all the way to its side, it would just be a flat piece of paper. But that's 2.5D, and so here we had some slight pivoting of that axis, the y-axis. Yeah, After Effects is what we used. You missed bready, Ben.
The bread that loves you back?
It's the bread that loves you back. Great bread.
Favorite one.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got. This is a pizza commercial I did last summer. This will really show that 2.5D that I was talking about, where we were just given still images and say, can you make this move in 3D-esque?
My father, Eris Pardalis, grew up in Greece. When he arrived here 50 years ago, he brought with him a taste of his childhood, a delicacy he would introduce to Missouri that brought joy to the taste buds of America. Pizza. Pizza so perfect, it could only have the Eris name. Eris's Pizza. We've been building communities around delicious food since 1961 and making friends for life.
Sounds great to me.
Yeah, who's hungry?
Yeah.
Let's see, the only other animations I brought with me today are the most recent true-false things that I did. This is a good example of working with other people. I was going on vacation kind of to LA to visit my friend Ryan, who also works in After Effects, and David Wilson got a hold of me just before I got out there and asked me if I wanted to do some animation work. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, it's the True False commercial. We got this guy, Eric Buckham, who did this poster, and that we just want to use this poster and do all animation and make it move. And it's like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Let me see the poster. And so when they showed me this poster, this like steampunk almost industrial, machine, very Metropolis kind of, I immediately fell in love with it. It's like, oh, we got to do this. So and he was in LA too, the guy who did the poster. So I went to LA. I was able to work with Ryan. And the two of us were acting as animators, and Eric was the guy who was feeding us all the art. And we came up with this. Just another example of something that you can create. You can take this flat image, and as long as there are separate layers there, you can bring it to life.
Like when the wheel spins, did you cut that out and then spin that, or did you have
right?
art for
That's the one little piece that we kind of tricked, or faked or whatever. We cheated. We found a 3D. I think Ryan actually created. He recreated those gears in a very, very simple 3D program, and we were able to blend that in like with the rest, because there was no way we could take that still image of the gear that's already kind of, on an angle and make that spin in Photoshop or in After Effects. So that was one piece that we cheated. There were a couple other video elements that I threw in, like the smoke coming out. I had some footage of smoke against a black background. I was able to composite that in, and but like the orb spinning around the very top there. It's something that we cut out individually and kind of animated that orbit, and then all the snaky kind of gaseous worm-like things that are coming off of the big giant orb at the top. That was something that we created in After Effects and had move.
Who did the music for that?
Bob Massey. And Bob Massey created the music for the commercial and all of the bumpers, which I'll show you one here. He was Eric's roommate in college, and I think he's also a friend of David Wilson's, and that's how the two of them actually met. But he was a godsend. I mean, we were kind of freaking out. We were rushing the commercial to get it out as soon as possible. and we kind of had all of the animation finished, and we didn't have any of the music yet. And I turned to Eric. I was like, Eric, what are we going to do about the music? And I was really hoping that, he wasn't expecting us to create something, because I'm not musically talented at all. But he's like, oh, I'll take care of it. I know a guy. And overnight, he had a rough cut of that was just spectacular, and they tweaked it just a little bit. And yeah, the guy,
That's awesome.
is hands down amazing. Yeah.
How long did it take for you to put that together, or your team, or who you worked with?
I'm sorry, could you say that?
How long did it take for you guys to put that together?
To do the commercial? Let me think. It was less than a month. I want to say maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And the longest portion of that, well, first we had to figure out exactly what we were doing. That it kind of, you don't always work with a storyboard that has been signed off on and stick with it. This was a much more organic, collaborative process, where what I did was I created these stems where each clip of that video was a separate animation that I had rendered out. Because rendering in After Effects is what takes the most time, I think, when you're dealing with really complex images. And this poster that we were working off of was just a huge file with 100 layers. And that was after we had simplified it. He had much more than that. So we would render out these stems, and we would try to put them together in Final Cut Pro in different arrangements. And then, we would come up with, well, maybe we need to do a pan from this side, or maybe we need to do a close-up over here. And that's kind of how, it was a very organic, put together this draft, and then we'll sit back and take a look at it and start the renders for the next day. So that made it a little longer. That, and just the sheer weight of this Photoshop file really kind of bogged down our render times. I think it took us maybe 3 weeks to do the commercial. And then we did these bumpers. They're all pretty similar, so I'll just make you watch one. This was Saturday. The tricky part there was creating this wormhole once you entered the television, because there wasn't really any artwork created for that part. That was kind of something that we just made up on the fly, like, oh yeah, we could go through the TV and we'll be in this wormhole, it'll look like a wormhole. And weeks go by and we're just still like talking about, what does this wormhole look like? I don't have a clue. But gradually, that was, it's another one of those organic processes where you just keep trying things, tweaking them, showing them to people, and getting feedback and tweaking it more. And it's never done until you absolutely don't have any more time to work on, and you have to turn it in. Yeah.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. That's a question I have for you, Ben. Like, when you're working on a job, do you always kind of have things planned out, or the type of work that you do with screen printing? Like, at what's your cutoff point?
What do you mean cutoff point?
Cutoff point of where you have to stop making creative decisions and you have to just start executing and printing?
Usually I have, before I even put like pen to paper, I usually have the idea of what I want to do, or I think about it for like a week or two beforehand. Whether it's a band poster, I'll listen to the album, stuff like that. So I have a pretty good idea of what it's going to look like in my head before I start to draw it. So it doesn't always turn out how I want it to, but when it does, it's just, piece of cake. It's just like, I can like crank it out in a day or two and then print it and it's done. But like, I'd say like the most time consuming part of it is the coming up with the idea and the look of the whole thing in my head. And then I just do it. I don't know, I'm late on deadlines a lot. That's how I do it. Or I just don't do the project if I don't like it. I don't know if you go back, how do I get back to my...
This actually goes back to the video. When you bring in a Photoshop file that's an illustration like that, what type of resolution does it need to be? Does it change from like a printed resolution to a screen resolution? And does that make the size smaller?
Yes. Yeah, for print resolution, you have to be at least
240, but
240, 260.
300 is preferred.
Yeah, we're talking about pixels per inch.
Yeah.
PPI, and then with screen, the screen resolution. Well, I mean,
it's 72 for web.
Right. Doesn't really matter. Well, okay. The resolution for HD. Well, there's two resolutions for HD video. There's 1280 by 720, and there's 1080 by. It's 1920 by 1080 actually.
Yeah.
And we, most of the time when I'm asked to do something in HD, unless someone absolutely says it must be 1080, we'll do 720 because it still looks pretty good. And most of the things that we do end up going on the web anyhow, which, at that point you're only going to be looking at 720 at the greatest, really.
Right.
So those are kind of like the canvas dimensions. And if I have something like this poster here, and I know I'm going to be panning up the whole thing, it needs to be a lot greater than my canvas size to begin with, because I still want to keep it at the highest quality possible. I'll never want to go below 100% of the quality of the poster. I don't want to see the jagged lines of the pixels, or I don't want it to be blurry. So you do need to keep pixel dimensions in mind.
I don't know what else we're talking about.
I guess one question is looking to the future, next steps for each of you with your process, your design.
Yeah, I'm really, really interested in video installations and using projectors, and I think I might work with Kat on doing a video installation soon. There's some exciting work that's being done a lot in Europe with 3D projection mapping, where people are projecting video onto three-dimensional objects that are kind of mapped to the computer, so that you can kind of change the distortion and make things look correct. I'm interested in doing more kind of live video type work. How about you?
That's a good question. I just finished, a series of paintings that will be in the upcoming PS Gallery show that opens, it opens on the 4th of April, but the reception is the 14th. And I don't usually paint, and they're pretty large scale, so that's been fun to kind of teach myself or reteach myself how to do that. I'd like to keep doing more fine art stuff. I've kind of stepped back from posters in the last year or so, just so I can do more of what I want. I don't know. Probably just keep doing the same stuff.
Great. Are there any other questions from the audience?
Yeah, I have one. I may be a little bit paranoid and Machiavellian, but when you do your work, you're trying to create an emotion in the people viewing it. You're trying to manipulate them to do something.
Right.
In your training or in this field, are there psychologists that study this and feed you information that allows you to do your job better that way?
You know, I mean, I've never run into that. I know there's a lot of psychology behind advertising, and essentially a concert poster is an advertisement. But I also sort of hate advertising, and I see it as something different. I don't see it as much of an advertisement as it is, you know, I mean, it's a tangible thing that you can buy or whatever. You can get it from the show. You can hang it on your wall. So it kind of functions as both. It kind of informs you of the concert beforehand, and it's something you can kind of like a souvenir afterwards. I think I'm always trying to create an emotion that either goes along with the band's music or just whatever I'm feeling. And that's why I like hand drawing so much, is because it kind of creates this warmth, this homemade feeling, and like, I guess I want people to be able to relate to it or somehow find comfort in the image. And that's really as far as it goes for me. I don't usually take on jobs that require me to sort of do any sort of brainwashing or any, you know, like any sort of intense, like, I don't know, sort of emotional attachment like that.
When I watch television, When I watch television, I try to minimize my exposure to advertising.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I find it emotionally overwhelming.
Right.
And, you know, I was just curious because what you're saying is it comes out of your personality and your own sense of creativity.
Yeah.
Rather than something that you're trained in order to manipulate people.
Right. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I haven't had television really, or cable. So I guess really no television for like a few years now. And it's been every time I like go to my parents' house and stay or something like that, you know, for a holiday, I just forget like that all these commercials exist. And I was like, I can't believe like, you know, like what a load of crap. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like.
Even if you're not watching it,
you have
the
to,
noise pollution.
Yeah, you have to buy this toothpaste and like these clothes and I don't know. It's just such. I mean, there's plenty of people who feel that way, but it's just such a weird thing to sort of have forced on you. Even like billboards, you know, it's like you can't not see them, kind of thing. And
yeah,
I don't know. I'd never want really any part of that.
You know, I put together commercials before, but I've never actually specifically thought about subliminal language or having, you know, a specific psychological element in mind, like, oh, I have to use red here because red's a color that sells or something like that. You're really, you know, just trying to make sure that it's getting the message across that the client is trying to send to the audience, and that it's keeping within the same tone of the target audience. So, you know, if we do a PSA commercial about kids and education, you know, it's not going to be, it's not going to have a lot of quick edits like you would find in a heavy metal music video, for example. It's going to be toned down. It's going to be slower paced. It might have brighter colors, or you know, a different color palette. But I'm never, you know, thinking about how do I really kind of manipulate the audience other than, you know, certain tones. And I think that's more of the job of the agency that would hire us. Usually that's how we get commercial jobs in the first place, is a client will come to a creative agency and they'll put together an entire campaign and part of that campaign will be a commercial. And so the agency will work together with us to work on the video or animation or both. And they'll be the ones that make the hard creative decisions, like you're saying.
I think sort of another example made me think of these. So I did all these film illustrations. And the year previous, it was for the Cinema Eye Honors, which is a documentary awards night. And for the year previous, I just illustrated all these screenshots they gave me from each movie and just kind of redrew them. But this year I wanted to try something different. And this was 2011 was the first year I did it, where I, really like read about the films and tried to get a feel for them, and then illustrated almost like a logo to kind of get across what the whole film was about, but just in like a tiny image. So I guess, you can see a few on here. I don't know what a good example would be, but it's like the exit through the gift shop image was that Banksy film about street art. And so I kind of wanted to have this, feeling of like someone just put this poster up, and it's sort of just, it's just sort of there, and you're kind of like, oh, what's that all about? It's got the wheat paste brush by it. But like this one was Restrepo, which was about this group of soldiers being basically pinned in this base in the Korangal Valley. And so they were just basically pinned down for like months, and so I kind of tried to get that whole feeling of being alone and just like stuck in this spot. But so I did that for 40 or so images over 3 days. There's an inside job, with the crashing lines. Marwin Call was about this guy who made all these tiny cities and reenacted all these scenes with G.I. Joes and stuff, and placed them in weird situations.
When you have a hard deadline like that, and you've got 3 days to do a lot of work, do you have a routine? Do you have like, what's your go-to fuel source, or like, do you take mini naps and just try to stay up all day, or do you just drink a lot of Red Bull, or what
drink a lot
do you
of coffee. Kind of just can't waste any time in that situation. So, I mean, for this happens every year, this job for me. So this is an example of like, I'd come up with these little thumbnails of like what each one could be in my sketchbook, and they'd be like 1 inch by 2 inches or something, and then I would turn that into the final product. So I would like, I had these 40 films to illustrate, and I would sort of come up with a plan for each of them before I started, and that way you don't really waste any time, and you can just kind of use all your time as efficiently as possible.
I think we have another question.
Where do you guys go for inspiration if you're hitting like a creative block or?
That is a great question.
Start with this, 'cause I haven't showed mine.
Okay.
I have a few artists that I can always look at that I really like. The two images on the left are Saul Steinberg. He's an old illustrator who used to do stuff for The New Yorker. He did a lot of New Yorker covers and illustrations for various people in like the 60s. And then the one on the right is a poster artist friend of mine. They're called Land, and they are always, it's like they do work that, it's like how my stuff looks in my head, but I can't really pull it off. You know what I mean? Like when I saw their work, I was like, this is what I was trying to do the whole time, and they've been, oh, well. So I've always got, that stuff to various websites that you can just, of artists that are always inspiring to you.
I try to surround myself with images. Even when I was painting in college, almost every studio you would walk into, every artist would have a wall or two of just images that they find, that they draw inspiration from, taped up around them. So what I do nowadays, I'll go to a lot of visual blogs like pixie.com and butdoesitfloat.com. That's one of my favorites. And if they're kind of like my starting points, and I'll find a piece of work that someone had done, and I'll go to their webpage and maybe artists that they like and whatnot, and I'll save all of these or take screenshots of all these images, and I'll have a folder on my computer of just inspirational images like that, and I'll turn it into a slideshow sometimes and just kind of have it on playing and scrolling through all these images, like on my iPad or something. That would be up on my desk, kind of like a picture frame, and kind of use that while I'm working.
Also, like, just unplug, go for a walk, listen to records, something that's like not even in the same medium that you're trying to work in. Anything to like get your mind on just anything else.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any other questions from the audience? You guys have any wrap-up thoughts at all? It's not required.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I guess my question would be like, Ben, how would you wrap up for Jonny, and Jonny, how would you wrap up for Ben?
Oh.
I don't know.
Well,
What would you?
just
Go ahead.
because we work in graphics doesn't mean that we think traditional media is dead. They're both very important for both of our processes, I think.
Yeah, that's true. We kind of, I guess, start on opposite ends of the spectrum, but it's sort of interchangeable.
Yeah.
I do mostly print stuff, which is dead, as everyone knows. And you do fancy video, internet stuff. Which is on the rise.
It's on the rise.
The internet's here to stay.
Yeah, if you're interested in animation and stuff, like right now, I'm interested in 3D animation. After making those True False commercials, I really felt some limitations as to what I could do with just working in 2D. So, I'm going to try to pick up a new program, a new piece of software, and you just have to jump in and do it. You can't. I mean, actually, today you could take a course on it if you wanted to spend the money, but there are plenty of resources online. You can teach yourself, and just create the discipline to stay on top of it.
Really.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised at how
Learn
much
how to
is
be-
out there. Lynda.com is a great resource for learning a new software, and there are hundreds of support groups online too for specific programs. So, yeah, get inspired and create something.
Okay, well, thank you very much. This, I think, unless you have anything else, wraps up Cat Chat number 3. We will have 4, 5, and 6 last Saturdays of every month through June. Thank you.
Sunglasses.